Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here, how's it going? So, before I get started with the main point of this video, I just wanted to say sorry about the lack of overall general boxing content on the channel over the past couple of months or so. As a lot of you know, I've been very busy lately. I've had a lot going on. I know it's the same old excuse, but I've been a lot more busy than usual as of late. Been obviously working a lot. I've been working full time, so that takes up the vast majority of my time. I went on a little trip to Nottingham recently. That took up a lot of my time. Had a lot of stuff going on, and in addition to that, I've got all the stuff going on with my other channel, you know, projects I'm working on, several pretty big projects for that channel. And yeah, I'm falling behind with that too, so I'd best pick up the pace. But in addition to all that, I've been training a lot. As a lot of you guys know, I've been training 3 days a week, sometimes 4. And the more I've been getting into that, the more I'm settling into it, if you know what I mean. I feel really comfortable now training, and I was sort of concerned in the beginning that I would do it for a while, then I'd quit, because that is sort of my nature, you know. I do things for a while, then I lose heart and I give up. But so far that hasn't happened, and I've been able to stay in a particular sort of mindset where I'm just active, you know. I spent a long time being sedentary, doing basically nothing, which is why I was able to make so many videos. But since I've been living a more active lifestyle, I'm always in the mood to do something, you know. I never want to be just sitting about not achieving anything. I want to be achieving something. So yeah, that's why I've not really been making much content on this channel. And yeah, I definitely will be making videos like this one where I'll be doing predictions, where I'll be editing and stuff like that. And just so you guys know, because a couple of people have asked me, I've got a couple of retrospectives in the works. There was actually one I was meant to have out weeks ago, my Seth Mitchell video. I was meant to do that weeks ago, but yeah, fell behind. But that's coming pretty soon. So let's talk about the upcoming fight between Crawford and Spence, because that's a fight that has got a lot of people talking. Several of my favourite channels and guys who I follow here have been talking about sort of the political situation surrounding that fight. You know, talking about the politics of it and the technical aspect of it. And the obvious thing with that fight, I don't really even need to say this, but the obvious thing surrounding it is it's a fight that really should have happened a long time ago. I think most of you would agree there. You know, the fight was in talks about 5 years ago, I believe, or maybe even longer, around about the time that Terence Crawford first moved up to welterweight. For some reason, undisputed is something that's been happening in several divisions lately. Of course, it happened twice at 140, it happened at 154, happened at cruiserweight, and it's seemingly on the verge of potentially happening at heavyweight. But for whatever reason, undisputed is a fight that never seemed like it would happen at welterweight, because there was too much of a political divide, you know, other side of the street, as certain fanatics like to say. And you know, you had Crawford, who was sort of knew where his bread was buttered with Top Rank. You know, he had his thing going on with them. Bob Arum would hype Crawford up, talk about how he's pound for pound #1, how he's so great, and yeah, he would basically fight the easiest level of opposition that he could fight and get paid very well. Unfortunately though, due to the nature of such things, Crawford wasn't able to really build a big fan base. Now, he has a lot of fans on the internet for sure. He has a lot of people who like to stick up for him and like to talk about how great he is. There's a plane up there. I'm not sure how well you can hear this, but where was I? He's got a lot of fans on the internet, a lot of people who stick up for him, but they love him so much, but they just don't love him enough to buy his fights. You know, it's the same old story. It was the same situation with Andre Ward, same situation with Rigondeaux. You know, these guys have so many fans on the internet, seemingly. So many people coping for them and backing them and whatnot. But they were never able to really draw crowds, were they? And I think that's the biggest problem with Crawford. And I think that's the thing that really tore his relationship with Bob Arum and Top Rank apart. The fact that they just, you know, they invested so much money in the guy for so little return. I mean, Bob Arum basically admitted, look, the guy doesn't sell. It is what it is. And as far as Errol Spence goes, Errol Spence has definitely done a lot more in terms of self-promotion and he's definitely gained a lot more popularity than Crawford has, and I think a lot of that is to do with the fact he has fought more significant fights at welterweight. You know, he's had unifications. You know, he was able to get the whole race baiting PBC crowd and LDBC and whatnot on board, so he has a sort of a built-in ethnic fan base, and because Crawford is sort of a threat to him, he doesn't really have that same fan base. But Errol Spence is definitely the more popular of the two. I would wager he could probably draw bigger crowds and do bigger numbers on pay-per-view if need be. So yeah, he's definitely, yeah. When you factor that in consideration with the fact that, you know, Spence is a unified champion at welterweight. He's bringing more to the table, more belts. He's got more noteworthy names on his resume. You'd have to say that he was pretty much the A side. I mean, I don't really like to talk in those terms, but again, you know, with boxing being a business, Errol Spence definitely brought more to the table, and that's surprising me that the fights actually happened. And I think if Crawford was still with Top Rank, if he was still with Bob Arum, and if he was still sort of getting his bread buttered, he wouldn't be so keen to take this fight. I think the reason he's taking the fight now, and I think Fight Film alluded to this a while back when he made a video talking about why the fight will probably happen, and it's pretty clear the guys do want it, it's because where else is he going to go? You know, where else is Terence Crawford going to go? I mean, is he going to fight Virgil Ortiz? Is he going to fight Josh Taylor? You know, is he going to fight Stanionis? Is he going to fight Ennis? You know, who's he going to fight? There's really nobody he can fight that would bring the same kind of money or the same kind of prestige as Errol Spence. But there's plenty of guys he can fight who bring the same kind of risk. Like, I would definitely consider someone like Virgil Ortiz, who was his mandatory, or someone like Josh Taylor, who could potentially be his mandatory if he moves up. Yeah, those are winnable fights. I'm not saying Crawford wouldn't beat those guys. He certainly could. But they're risky fights. And they're guys who bring some of the same attributes that Errol Spence has, you know, size, power, awkwardness. You know, so Errol Spence, he's a guy who's a massive risk for Crawford, but it's a risk worth taking because Crawford's probably going to retire soon. He's like pushing 36. And where else is he going to go? And as far as Errol Spence, it's a similar situation for him. He's had all his big fights now. He's made pretty much all the money he's going to make outside of this fight. And, you know, he's not going to be around too much longer, particularly not at welterweight. He's a guy who's absolutely huge for the weight, massive for welterweight. And it's well known that he has to drain himself to make weight. In fact, he has fought at 154, I believe, earlier in his career. So, yeah, it's a situation where he's going to be really, really tight at the weight, and the longer he leaves it, it might actually favour Crawford, even though I think Crawford's older and a little bit more shot-worn from fights. Spence is a guy who's definitely tighter at the weight, so that's going to make this fight interesting. As far as how I think the fight's going to go, ignoring the political situation, because I honestly don't know at this stage who's going to be favoured politically, I would have said Spence, but, you know, Spence, as popular as Spence is, he hasn't really endeared himself to fans, has he? With the sort of the outer ring behaviours, you know, getting in drunk driving accidents and stuff like that, and generally just being a bit of an idiot. You know, it seems to me like they're just going to leave this one to reach its natural conclusion. I don't think there's going to be any bias in this fight, and I can't see there being a rematch. I think this is pretty much a cash-out fight for both guys. So I'm going to ignore the political situation, and I'm just going to look at the fight from a technical point of view. So how do I think it's going to go? So you've got two guys who are both southpaws, both very physically durable. Both guys have shown excellent chins in their careers, particularly Crawford. You know, because Crawford is a guy who gets hit a lot in fights. A lot of people don't realise that, but he's got an excellent chin. I mean, the shots he took from Aegis Kavalauskas, I know he got dropped in that fight, but it wasn't counted. But outside of the knockdown, he really showed great durability in that fight. And even in his last fight when he fought Avanesian, who, yeah, Avanesian isn't a world-class fighter, you know, he's more European level, but Avanesian is a big puncher, right? We saw what he did to Josh Kelly, you know, we saw what he did to Kerman Leiraha. So, you know, he's a guy who can definitely punch. You know, he's knocked out some durable guys. So the fact that he was able to land so many shots on Crawford, and Crawford was able to just walk him down, put a beating on him and stop him, I thought was quite impressive. So yeah, both guys have shown a lot of durability. Both guys have shown a lot of stamina, and they've shown the ability to get down and dirty in the ring, particularly Spence. You know, he throws a lot of low blows in fights. You know, he's a guy who'll rough you up on the inside. There'll be head clashes and stuff like that. We saw what he did to Sean Porter, for example. I mean, he couldn't go flipping around in that fight without targeting the belt line. So, yeah, you know, Errol Spence is a guy who can get down and dirty. He's tough. He's the bigger man of the two, but he's also going to be more drawn out at the weight, I think. If you'd asked me 5 years ago how these guys match up, I would have definitely favoured Crawford, because about 5 years ago, I'd say I kind of bought the marketing around Crawford, that he was like this high-level technician. But as close as this fight gets, and the more I look at Crawford and the more breakdowns that I study, Crawford's definitely not as technically good as I thought he was. He is technically good, don't get me wrong. He can punch and he can fight inside and he can switch stances, and he's quite awkward and herky-jerky. And, you know, he's a guy who, so far in his career, he's been able to dominate at world level. But he's a guy who, like I said earlier, he gets hit a lot and he relies on his chin too much. And we've seen so many times in boxing that when fighters do that, when they reach their mid-30s, you know, they kind of don't have the same durability, because they get hit so much that their chin ends up getting cracked. You know, we've seen that with so many fighters over the years. You know, guys like Antonio Margarito, for example, he's a great example, relied on his chin way too much. And by the end of his career, he couldn't really take shots like that anymore. And yeah, Terence Crawford's a guy who definitely, he's got a little bit of Margarito in him. You know, he's a guy who will get hit, he'll take shots to land shots, and he'll break you down and stop you. And I don't know what it is. He has this narrative about him that he's this master technician in the ring. I don't think he is. I think Crawford, to me, is a guy who is more of a physical fighter than he is a technical fighter. And that's not to say that he doesn't have technique. He certainly does. But I've never seen Crawford be this great long-range boxer, for example. Whereas if you look at Errol Spence, at times in his career, he has shown good long-range boxing. You know, he's shown a good jab when he fought Mikey Garcia. And I know Mikey Garcia was significantly smaller, but I thought that Spence showed a good jab in that fight. He showed good patience, good distance control, and he sort of shut down anything Mikey Garcia tried to do. And that's not that Mikey Garcia tried that much. He was mostly in survival mode. But when he did try something, I thought that Spence was able to take a half step back and just stick a jab in his face and move. And to me, Spence showed good patience in that fight, showed a good boxing IQ. And if truth be told, I think he's a little bit better technically than I initially thought he was, because when I first started watching Errol Spence, I thought this guy's a physical specimen. You know, big puncher, strong, great chin, but technically very limited. But he's definitely technically better than I thought he was. And I could see a scenario in this fight where Errol Spence is able to keep Crawford on the end of the jab, is able to land punches, and then Crawford is going to have to adjust. You know, Crawford's going to have to do what he does in every fight. And that's, you know, he gets hit a few times, realizes he can't just outbox the guy at long range, and then has to get down and dirty. You know, he has to come forward, has to start working the body, has to throw hooks and uppercuts inside, has to switch stance to confuse the opponent and try and break him down and stop him. And I've noticed a lot of people seem to think he's going to do that in this fight. A lot of people seem to think he's going to stop Spence. One of the reasons I suspect people think this is that Errol Spence, as we know, has had a pretty well-documented accident. You know, he was in a car accident a few years ago, which badly damaged him. You know, he had serious problems with his vision. You know, he had teeth knocked out, stuff like that. And that's the type of thing that takes a long time, if ever, to recover from fully. So there's definitely questions around Errol Spence's durability. But Errol Spence has fought a couple times since then. You know, he fought Danny Garcia in what was a pretty lame fight, but he won it convincingly. And he fought Ugas, who, of course, got that win over Pacquiao. And yeah, he was able to convincingly beat Ugas. So Errol Spence, look, yeah, there's still a concern there about what's going to happen. Like, let's say he gets hit in the eye, and you know, it's just a sharp, stinging shot that he doesn't see coming. That could impair his vision. But at the end of the day, I think if he's able to keep the fight at long range and just not get drawn into Crawford's sort of mind games in the ring, just keep it long, keep it steady, keep his cool, just like he did against Mikey Garcia and just like he did against Danny Garcia. You know, just keep it steady, keep it long. I could see a scenario where he convincingly outboxes Crawford. And as we know, from Errol Spence's career. The guy's big, the guy's strong, the guy's got a great chin, or at least he did have before the accident. And I've not seen a whole lot to suggest he doesn't anymore. I could see Errol Spence, if need be, I'm not saying he has to do this, but if need be, he could maybe match Crawford on the inside. And you know, if Crawford's trying to rough him up, it will depend if the referee is more lenient towards Spence, like he has been in other fights, like the Sean Porter fight and whatnot. But I could see Spence sort of catching Crawford with low blows inside. I could see him roughing him up and pushing him back and leaning on him and using his size. And I think in that scenario, the fight will come down to fitness and durability. And we know that both guys have got that in spades. But at the same time, we know that both guys have taken a lot of punches. I mean, both these guys, when they fought Sean Porter, Sean Porter's a good fighter. I like Sean Porter, but he's never been a elite fighter, has he? And he's never been known as like an elite puncher. But Sean Porter was catching both of these guys with a lot of punches. He pretty much quit when he fought Crawford. It was a bizarre situation. I think he was a lot more well prepared when he fought Spence, and he had more will to win when he fought Spence. So that could explain why Spence wasn't able to stop him. But he was able to drop him. It's just the situation there was that Porter just didn't quit like he did against Crawford. So, you know, it's a situation where I think it's a fairly evenly matched fight. One guy has some major advantages, and that's Spence, because he's the bigger guy, and I think he's got the longer arms too. I could be wrong about that. Crawford does have long arms for a guy who's about 5'8", but even if he does, I still think that at long range, Spence has proven to be the better boxer of the two at long range. So yeah, it's a hard fight to call, because again, the thing that's really concerning me, and this concerns me even more than the accident, is the weight. Because Errol Spence is huge for the welterweight division. That guy should have been at 154 years ago, and he could have been easily a top 10 guy in that division. So I think it's going to be very difficult, very difficult for Spence to make weight at this stage, especially since he hasn't fought in how many times has Spence fought since the whole lockdown and all that? I don't think he's fought that often. It could have been just once since like 2020. So yeah, he's definitely not been he's not been the most active of fighters, but neither has Crawford really. So yeah, it's a hard fight to call, but I'm going to go with my gut instinct on this one. And even though the weight making issue is in the back of my mind for Spence, at this point in time, and I know the fight's a while away now, I'm going to go with Spence by a very close decision. I don't think they'll rob Crawford or anything like that. I don't think it'll be controversial. It certainly could be, but both of these guys have had a lot of political backing. Both of them are relatively well liked among the American boxing fraternity, and of course I'm not talking about fans here. I'm talking about like the promoters, judges, referees and whatnot. They've both been given some support along the way. They're both gifted, and I could see both of them getting a pretty fair shake in the fight, if truth be told. So yeah, I'm gonna go with, at this point in time, my mind might change, but how I feel right now at this point in time, I'm gonna go with Errol Spence, and I'm going to go with Errol Spence to win by a I'm going to say a close, say like unanimous or majority split decision. I think it's going to be very close on the cards, and I think it's going to be legitimately close on the cards, because I think there's going to be a lot of messy rounds, a lot of close rounds, a lot of rounds where there's clinching and low blows, and referee's going to have to get on top of it. And I'm standing on a little island here and I'm slipping, sorry. I'm trying to protect my phone. But yeah, I think there's going to be some legitimately close fights, close rounds where both guys are using questionable tactics. Like Crawford will sometimes pull his opponent's head down, and I could see him trying to pull Spence onto shots. I could see Spence hitting him in the balls, and I could just see it being a bit messy. I don't think it's going to be the most entertaining fight. It will be competitive, I think, but I don't think it'll be like a war or anything like that. I think it's going to be competitive, messy, difficult to score. But I think the difference might be Spence's long-range boxing when he uses it, and I think he's going to pick up points on the outside. And yeah, I'm going to go with Errol Spence by a very close decision. Maybe some people will disagree with the decision. It could be one of them. It could be similar to the Porter fight, where some people thought he won, some people thought he lost. But it was definitely a messy and competitive fight. So yeah, at this point in time, I'm going to go with Spence on points. I think it's probably going to go the distance. So yeah, Spence on points. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. God bless.